Here's Tertullian. This is Tertullian. Now you guys may be asking, why Tertullian? Well, I'll tell you in just a second. First, we're going to read Tertullian. This is his book, An Exhortation on Chastity, chapter 7. He says, "Are not even we laity priests? It is written, a kingdom also, and priests to his God and Father has he made us. It is the authority of the church and the honor which has acquired sanctity through the joint session of the order, which has established the difference between the order and the laity. Accordingly, where there is no joint session of the ecclesiastical order, meaning where there are no bishops, where there is no ecclesiastical order, you offer the Eucharist and baptize and are priest alone for yourself. But where three are, a church is, albeit they be laics. For each individual lives by his own faith, nor is there exception of persons with God, since it is not hearers of the law who are justified by the Lord, but doers, according to what the apostle withal says. Therefore, if you have the right of a priest in your own person, in cases of necessity, it behooves you also to have likewise the discipline of a priest, whenever it may be necessary to have the right of a priest. If you are a digamist, meaning if you're married multiple times, do you baptize? If you are a digamist, do you offer the Eucharist? How much more capital a crime is it for a digamist laic to act as a priest, when the priest himself, if he turned digamist, is deprived of the power of acting the priest? You hear Tertullian, guys, saying, if a priest gets married multiple times, then he's deprived of the power of acting as the priest automatically. There is no unconditional respect for the office of the priesthood in the early church. He says in this hypothetical question, he says, but to necessity, you say, indulgence is granted. So he's saying this person hypothetically might respond, well, Tertullian, if there really were an emergency where we had to act as a priest, give us a little bit of slack here. If we have multiple marriages here, what if there's nobody who's available to offer the Eucharist except people who've been married multiple times? Like, what if we've all been married multiple times? You gotta give us a little bit of slack here. You can't expect us to actually have the discipline of a priest. So he says, but to necessity, indulgence is granted, you might say. And he says, no necessity is excusable, which is avoidable. In a word, shun to be found guilty of digamy, and you do not expose yourself to the necessity of administering what a digamist may not lawfully administer. God wills us all to be so conditioned as to be ready at all times and places to undertake the duties of his sacraments. Wow. Total destruction of the Catholics and Orthodox, but what are they going to say? We know what they're going to say. Oh, that's Tertullian, man. Tertullian, he was excommunicated at the end of his life, and so, we don't have to listen to him. Well, guys, to say such a thing, to say that we're going to throw out all the writings of somebody just because they became a bishop at the end of their life is really ridiculous.
Heretic.
Huh?
Heretic.
Just because they became a heretic at the end of their life? What did I say?
Bishop.
Oh, just because they became a bishop? No, I meant to say, just because somebody becomes a heretic at the end of their life does not mean that everything they ever said was wrong. And we know that the church continued to revere Tertullian's writings, even if the man himself fell away from the faith. For instance, if you look up anything, I'm just going to do this randomly. Church fathers on, here, look, Mary's perpetual virginity. You can go on these websites. Maybe I should say something like baptism. We're just going to do a random thing. Okay, necessity of baptisms. Here are all these Catholic websites. They're going to give you all the quotes. Hermas, Justin Martyr, Tertullian. See, guys, they don't hesitate to use Tertullian. They're always quoting Tertullian and Origen. And Cyprian, of course. So, guys, don't be fooled by these Catholics and Orthodox. They will reject Tertullian when it's convenient for them, but they'll cite him whenever it is convenient for them. They'll say, "Oh, well, he agrees with the whole church right now, so we're gonna quote him." And here, he seems to be in agreement with the entire early church, but he disagrees with us, our current heresy, so we're just not going to quote him. But in that case, it's not just Tertullian they're not quoting. They're not going to quote anybody from the early church. Okay, so why are we quoting Tertullian here? Why do we think Cyprian would agree with Tertullian wholeheartedly? Listen to Jerome in his book On Illustrious Men, where he talks about all the church fathers that have lived in the pre-Nicene church and why you should read their writings, and he gives biographies of them. So he gives a little biography of Tertullian. He says, Tertullian, the presbyter, now regarded as chief of the Latin writers after Victor and Apollonius, was from the city of Carthage in the province of Africa, and was the son of a proconsul or centurion, a man of keen and vigorous character. He flourished chiefly in the reign of the Emperor Severus and Antoninus Caracalla, and wrote many volumes, which we pass by because they are well known to most. So he's saying everybody already knows Tertullian's writings. He says, I myself have seen a certain Paul, an old man of Concordia, a town of Italy, who, while he himself was a very young man, had been secretary to the blessed Cyprian, who was already advanced in age. He said that he himself had seen how Cyprian was accustomed never to pass a day without reading Tertullian, and that he frequently said to him, Give me the master, meaning by this, Tertullian. So guys, Cyprian read Tertullian constantly. Cyprian was so absolutely respectful toward Tertullian that he would call him the master. Hand me the master. And why should this surprise anybody? Tertullian was extremely famous all around the world, but Tertullian was from the town of which city, guys? Do you know which city? Where's Tertullian from? What's his city? Anybody remember?
Carthage.
Carthage. And what city is Cyprian from? What city? Carthage. Cyprian of Carthage. That's what he's called. Cyprian was a bishop of Carthage and an early Christian writer. So guys, Cyprian and Tertullian are in the same city. We have Jerome confirming it, that Cyprian always read Tertullian and that he referred to him as the master. And you hear Tertullian saying, listen, in cases of necessity, you guys need to offer the Eucharist. Tertullian is not only talking about times of persecution where a bishop might be martyred, and so in that case we have to offer the Eucharist. It is true that's a situation that would have been common. Tertullian is saying that's a case of necessity where you guys would need to offer the Eucharist yourselves and baptize yourselves without the bishop. But Tertullian is also in agreement with Cyprian, and Cyprian is in agreement with Tertullian, that if a bishop were to fall away from the faith, we would have to baptize and offer the Eucharist apart from our evil bishop. So they're completely in agreement with each other. And if they want to reject that argument I've made, they can do that if they feel like it. Well, why don't we just read some more quotes on the subject of what we do in the case of a bishop who falls away from the faith. And where were we? Have we answered everything here? Yes, outside the church there's no salvation. Yeah, well, Cyprian again, he says that the church there's no. They can do that if they feel like it. Well, why don't we just read